New footage from the Brazilian GP has sent shockwaves through the paddock, and what it shows might prove that Oscar Piastri was sabotaged from within McLaren. Tensions are boiling inside the team as strategic decisions, pit stop timing, and driver treatment come under heavy scrutiny. Is McLaren truly backing both drivers equally? Piastri's title hopes took a brutal hit after a controversial 10-second penalty, and now, with only 3 races left, his fight against Norris looks rigged from the inside. We're unpacking the new footage, analyzing McLaren's strange decisions, and breaking down how this internal war could decide the 2025 world champion. The Brazilian Grand Prix was supposed to be another chapter in McLaren's rise back to the top, a moment where both of their young stars could push toward championship glory. But what happened in São Paulo has flipped the paddock upside down. Oscar Piastri, one of the sharpest and most composed drivers on the grid, was handed a controversial 10-second penalty. But what's causing even more noise now is not just that penalty, it's what new footage has revealed about how his own team may have contributed to his downfall. Moments after the race, internal garage video began to circulate, footage showing an unusually cold atmosphere between Piastri and his side of the McLaren crew. Mechanics avoided eye contact. Communications were short and distant. The timing of his pit window seemed deliberately delayed, compromising his position in traffic. And most damning of all? A resurfaced sprint replay appears to show Lando Norris kicking up water across the racing line just seconds before Piastri's crash, a move dismissed as incidental, until now. This isn't just a racing controversy. This is the kind of tension that splits a team down the middle. With Lando Norris leading the championship and Piastri trailing by 24 points, every decision carries extra weight. Every strategy call, every tire compound, every radio message is a signal either of support or subtle sabotage. And after Brazil, a growing part of the fanbase and even some insiders are beginning to ask, has McLaren already chosen its champion? For Piastri, the stakes could not be higher. He came into Brazil with momentum and the numbers to stay in the fight. But the sprint incident took him out early. Then in the Grand Prix, a lap 6 incident with Antonelli and Leclerc spiraled into a penalty that derailed his race strategy. The 10 seconds added weren't just time lost, they shattered the rhythm he had built. He dropped to 5th. Norris won. The points gap grew. And now, with just 3 rounds remaining, Piastri needs more than pace, he needs miracles. Yet through all of this, Oscar Piastri hasn't cracked. No media outbursts. No excuses. Just quiet frustration and laser focus. That's what makes this so powerful. He knows something's off. He feels it. He even admitted post-race, "I've had to completely change my driving, and it's not natural." That's the confession of a driver trying to win fairly in a system that might not be fair. And the fans are noticing. He's not just fighting his teammate, he's fighting the politics of a championship machine. The drama began long before Sunday's race even started. In the sprint, Oscar Piastri was on course for a comfortable 3rd-place finish. But coming out of turn 3 on lap 6, his McLaren snapped suddenly and violently into the wall. The conditions were damp, but replays revealed something unusual. Moments before, Lando Norris had gone wide on the inside curb and kicked up a stream of water directly across the dry racing line. 2 more cars crashed in the same spot within seconds. To the naked eye, it looked like a coincidence. But the telemetry suggested otherwise. That mysterious moment set the tone for the rest of Piastri's weekend. On Sunday, during the Grand Prix, the chaos escalated. Following a safety car restart, Piastri went for a clean move down the inside of Kimi Antonelli into turn 1. He locked up slightly under pressure but kept control. Antonelli, perhaps startled, drifted left. They made contact. That forced Antonelli into Leclerc, ending the Ferrari driver's race in the barriers. Within minutes, the FIA handed Piastri a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, a ruling that stunned commentators and rival teams alike. That penalty changed everything. McLaren had planned a 2-phase strategy for Piastri, aiming for a long first stint to undercut traffic later in the race. With the penalty applied at his first stop, Piastri lost track position, clean air, and any hope of challenging for the podium. Worse still, Norris was allowed to extend his first stint by several laps, giving him a perfect pit window and a clear run at the lead. For many watching, it was the moment where the team's priorities became crystal clear. Internally, the optics didn't help. Piastri's radio traffic was clipped and transactional. Norris received detailed support, even during less critical phases of the race. Small things, pit timing, tire information, overtake advisories, they all leaned in Lando's favor. Whether intentional or not, the effect was the same. Piastri looked isolated. He was being outscored, outstrategized, and, after the sprint crash, perhaps even outprotected. Despite this, Piastri stayed composed. He made no errors after the penalty, managed his tire degradation beautifully, and still pulled off 2 critical overtakes in the final laps to finish P5. But it wasn't the result he deserved. What could have been a 15 or 18-point finish turned into 10. And while Norris celebrated another dominant win, his 4th of the season, Piastri was left to digest not just a lost opportunity, but a weekend where everything seemed stacked against him. This is where the deeper problem emerges. Inside McLaren, the energy is shifting. Piastri knows he's on the back foot, not just in points but in perception. And when a driver begins to feel like the underdog inside his own garage, the battle becomes twice as hard. The fight isn't just on track, it's psychological. Every engineer's tone, every strategy debrief, every quiet look in the garage begins to matter. That's the weight Oscar Piastri is now carrying. And it might be the biggest challenge of his career so far. Once the penalty came through, McLaren had no choice but to switch gears on the fly. Piastri's race plan, originally built around a long first stint and aggressive late push, was instantly compromised. Now the focus was recovery. But in the tight pack at Interlagos, overtaking is never guaranteed. That meant perfect tire timing, precise deployment of ERS, and composure under heavy traffic pressure. The engineers had to gamble and Piastri had to execute it flawlessly. The damage from the turn 1 contact didn't take him out of the race, but it wasn't negligible either. His front wing suffered minor but measurable damage. Data from the garage later showed a loss of aerodynamic balance, a mild increase in understeer, especially noticeable in Sector 2. That's the trickiest part of the track, where load transfer is constant. Many drivers would have complained. Piastri? He adjusted. He changed his entry points, modulated steering pressure, and even altered his brake balance mid-stint to compensate. With a compromised car, Oscar had to rely on one of the least talked about strengths in modern F1, energy management. With limited DRS and minimal straight-line advantage due to added drag, his success depended on deploying battery power at exactly the right moments. His moves on Alonso and Zhou were textbook examples: precise, clean, and without overspending energy. In fact, engineers reported that Piastri used less ERS over the course of his second stint than most of the top 5. That's not luck, that's craft. Inside the garage, though, a difference in tone became evident. Norris's side of the pit wall was dynamic, engaged, and detail-heavy. Piastri's comms were shorter. Less info, less feedback. In a neutral world, it might mean nothing. But coming off a controversial penalty and a sprint incident with indirect links to his teammate, every small imbalance looked amplified. To viewers, it was impossible to ignore. One side of the garage looked like it was racing to win, the other to survive. Still, the Australian didn't fold. Through the middle part of the race, Oscar clawed his way through the midfield. His tire degradation was low. His sector time stabilized. His onboard showed no panic, no excess corrections. Even the high-speed turns compromised by that slight understeer were taken with minimal lift. It was the kind of driving you expect from a seasoned veteran, not a young driver under pressure and behind on points. By the checkered flag, Piastri had secured P5. Not a headline finish, not a podium, but given the circumstances, a damaged car, a time penalty, and possible intra-team conflict, it was one of the most controlled drives of the season. Quietly brilliant. And perhaps more importantly, a signal to McLaren that even if politics are swirling, Piastri won't be the one to unravel. He's here to fight. All the way. In a championship fight decided by tenths of a second and millimeters on corner entry, the 10-second penalty given to Oscar Piastri in Brazil wasn't just a setback, it was a seismic blow. Without it, he was on course for at least a P3 finish. With it, he landed in P5. That's an 8-point swing. And in a title race as volatile as this, 8 points could be the difference between lifting the trophy and watching someone else do it. Let's talk numbers. With 3 races left in the 2025 season, Lando Norris now leads the championship with 390 points. Oscar Piastri sits second with 366. The gap? 24 points. That's nearly a full race win. If Oscar had secured P3 in Brazil, the gap would have shrunk to just 16. That penalty, arguably awarded too swiftly and without full review, changed more than a finishing position. It altered the narrative. Norris now has the upper hand in points, in momentum, and perhaps in team confidence. And confidence, in Formula One, is not just personal. It's organizational. Brazil marked a turning point in how McLaren's championship strategy is perceived. Until now, the idea was parity: equal cars, equal support, may the best man win. But after a race weekend riddled with imbalance in pit strategy, internal comms, and even tone, it's hard to ignore the signs. It doesn't feel like a two-car team anymore. It feels like a favorite has emerged. And for Oscar Piastri, that changes everything. What began as a friendly rivalry is now entering dangerous territory. The Brazilian Grand Prix created emotional and political fallout that could ripple into every remaining race. If Piastri begins to feel isolated, even subtly, that affects his driving. Not in terms of raw speed, but in how he manages risk, in how assertively he makes strategy calls, in how much he trusts the voices in his ear. And if those doubts grow, so does the internal divide, turning a championship bid into a civil war inside Woking. Yet amid the fallout, something else is becoming clear. Oscar Piastri isn't just reacting to this with frustration. He's evolving. His drive in Brazil wasn't angry, it was methodical. His handling of media pressure has been sharp, composed, and precise. He hasn't lashed out. He hasn't played victim. And in a sport where maturity off-track often defines longevity on-track, that's the kind of composure teams can build dynasties around. It's why so many within the paddock believe his time is coming, penalty or not.